Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this event to launch the new global public good, Reimagining Girls' Education, Solutions to Keep Girls Learning in Emergencies. This event is organized by UNICEF, and we are delighted to have all our partners here with us today. My name is Wongani Grace Taulo, and I am the Gender Equity and Inclusion Lead here at UNICEF in New York. I'll be your moderator for this event. Around this time last year, the COVID pandemic shook the world and seriously disrupted learning for millions of children, with girls disproportionately affected. As the global education community quickly adapted to school closures, we found ourselves rethinking the way learning is delivered and the experience by and experienced by children, and ramped up our efforts to reach the most marginalized, including girls. During this crisis, we have seen more clearly the value of multimodal delivery approaches to support inclusive and equitable learning opportunities for every child and every girl. Today's launch is an opportunity for us to have a strategic dialogue about best practices and solutions, and to ensure equity and continuity of learning for girls during emergencies, including what investments, resources, and advocacy are required to scale up such solutions. I am honored to introduce two phenomenal and well-known champions of girls' education, Ms. Henrietta Fore, Executive Director, UNICEF, and Ms. Alice Albright, Chief Executive Officer, Global Partnership for Education, who will provide us with opening remarks. I'll now give the floor to Ms. Fore for the first remark, and thereafter Ms. Albright will give her remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And let me add my good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, everywhere. On behalf of UNICEF, thank you for joining us to launch Reimagining Girls' Education, Solution to Keep Girls Learning in Emergencies. I want to acknowledge Alice Albright and the Global Partnership for Education and the Overseas Development Institute, the partners that have helped to make this new global public good possible. 1 year into the COVID-19 pandemic, we are starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Many countries have made efforts to limit the country-wide lockdowns, and schools are now fully open in more than 100 countries. Nevertheless, it is not the time to falter in our commitment and action. Through collective efforts, we have learned a great deal about the most cost-effective solutions to keep girls learning, even in remote locations and in the aftermath of emergencies. For girls, we know that there is a differential impact of emergencies on their education. Wherever girls are, they must have access to quality learning opportunities. This year, UNICEF is celebrating 75 years of defending children around the world. While this milestone comes at a time of unprecedented challenges, our message remains unchanged. The rights of every child, of every girl, are inviolable, and education is one of the most powerful tools for girls to fulfill their fundamental rights. Building on our experience, we are harnessing this moment to step up with bold and urgent action to rebuild and to reimagine education systems to ensure that no girl is left behind, even in emergencies. The crisis has shown us that learning can occur anywhere and at any time through innovative solutions. We recognize that all types of solutions to deliver quality learning for girls are necessary, from high tech to low tech to no tech, but also that in today's world, every girl needs to be digitally literate and connect to unlock the access to possibilities beyond her imagination. We have identified bridging the global digital divide as an opportunity to seize, to bring quality education to all. Through UNICEF's Reimagine Education and GIGA initiatives and Generation Unlimited, we are working with partners to revolutionize learning and skills development for every child through safe digital learning, internet connectivity, devices, affordable data, and young people's engagement. Girls are at the heart of this work. One example of this is our collaboration with Microsoft on the Learning Passport. This innovative global platform provides flexible online and offline learning, content that is in multiple languages, even in emergencies, and it also includes gender responsive and inclusive content. Several countries are currently rolling out the Learning Passport. Today, you will hear about Zimbabwe, and they are using the platform to teach the most vulnerable girls. The Learning Passport is one of many programming examples featured in the Solutions book that we are launching today. The Solutions book shows that the global education community has an arsenal of programming expertise and experience and tools to support girls' learning in emergencies. But transformative political leadership and strategic investments are necessary to scale up these solutions and reach the last girl. Let us learn from the impactful and innovative solutions presented and use them to scale up our work. Let us commit to generating and using evidence to ensure that our work meets the learning needs of every child, of every girl. And lastly, let us ensure that girls and young women's voices guide everything that we do. Their meaningful engagement and participation are crucial to building back better. 2021 is an important year for us to get back on track and to accelerate action to achieve SDG 4 and SDG 5. We must also use it as a rallying cry to ensure that girls' learning in emergencies remains high on the global agenda. With no time to waste, let us work together so that every girl can go to school and acquire the knowledge and skills that she needs to shape her own future and that of her own community. So thank you, and let me pass the floor over to my good friend and colleague, Alice Albright. Alice.
Thank you so much, Henrietta. I think we should all commend you and UNICEF so much, all your colleagues, for all the wonderful work that you're doing. Generation Unlimited, GIGA, you can certainly count on GPE to do all we can to help you with all of that. But dear friends and colleagues, also wanted to shout out Rob Jenkins, who's on our board and a wonderful operational partner for us within UNICEF. Let me thank all of you for hosting this very important event and for inviting me to provide opening remarks. It is really a pleasure to be with all of you, and in particular with you, Henrietta. I hope all of you are keeping well. As we gather today, we find ourselves in a particular moment. Unfortunately, a perfect storm, a learning crisis coupled with a pandemic, which has led to an unprecedented crisis that has hit girls the hardest. This all threatens to reverse the precious, but still all too unlimited progress that has been made towards gender equality in recent decades. Still, an estimated 20 million girls could drop out of school. Even before the pandemic, despite significant gains in enrollment in certain places, girls were at a disadvantage for accessing and completing both primary and lower secondary education. For example, nearly 1 in 3 adolescent girls from the poorest households have never set foot in a classroom, and 13 million more girls could be forced into early marriage by struggling parents in the upcoming decade. This is why GPE has mobilized our fastest and largest emergency response, which is over $500 million, to help countries contend with the education impacts of the pandemic. This money has been used to support our partner countries' education and to help prevent a catastrophic loss of learning and waste of human potential, particularly for girls. Today, we are coming together to celebrate the success of a $25 million joint initiative, which was part of the response package, undertaken by UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Bank to support a coordinated international COVID-19 response focused on continued learning for children during the pandemic, particularly the most marginalized. Over 15 different initiatives are being piloted in 45 GPE partner countries. These have been aimed to optimize opportunities for coordinated interlinked support, and they help bridge the gap between emergency and longer-term education provision. The initiatives by UNICEF, the World Bank, and UNESCO address different elements of remote learning. These include support for teachers, the use of high-tech, low-tech, and no-tech learning materials, parental and caregiver support, and very importantly, learning assessment and approaches to engage vulnerable groups, including girls. And we are excited today to be here to share the latest product of this investment, which is the Reimagining Girls Education Toolkit, which will be presented and which will help decision makers to better understand how to support girls' learning during emergencies, such of course as the pandemic. As we look to build back better and equal from COVID, we must ensure that we reach the most vulnerable learners, especially girls. At GPE, we are committed to investing in girls and identifying the most critical systemic and social barriers holding them back. That is why our new strategy hardwires gender throughout all operations, including a targeted financing window to incentivize gender priorities and achieve greater gender equality. That is why GPE aims to raise at least $5 billion through our current finance campaign, which will culminate in a conference in July in the UK. This time our financing conference is being hosted by President Kenyatta of Kenya and Prime Minister Johnson of the UK. If we are successful with our replenishment campaign, it will enable 46 million girls to go to school and protect 2 million girls from early childhood marriage. Let me again thank and commend UNICEF and its technical partner, including ODI, for this groundbreaking and essential work. We are committed to leveraging, and you can assure that we will do everything we can to leverage the full breadth of the GPE partnership to support the uptake of the toolkit, and in doing so, help ensure that as many girls and adolescent young women as possible get a chance to go to school and learn. On this, we simply cannot fail. So let me thank everybody at UNICEF again. You all are dear friends, and we're delighted to be here and look forward to hearing the rest of the presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Henrietta Fore and Ms. Alice Albright, for opening up this event with such inspiring words. Your leadership in this cause is always a reminder that there is hope, and together we can achieve the dream of quality education for every girl. Thank you again. We will now hear from Nanyongo Catherine Desire, a 13-year-old student from Uganda. She will be speaking about her learning experience during COVID-19.
My name is Nanyongo Desire Catherine. I'm in primary 7 at Shualera Ame Primary School. In Corona, I've been using the radio. I listen to a math lesson, science lessons, English. Grandma sometimes, if she has money, used to buy for me the newspapers. I read them with my young sister. At our school here, the UNICEF gave us the mobile station, computers, loudspeakers. I get time to come here after doing my work at home. We use the mobile station to access the information on Colibri, and Colibri is a program uploaded with digital lessons. You select what you want and you can hear and see. So me, I select audiovisual because the class is inclusive. And I like coming to this mobile station because when I use the mobile station, it does not require internet. We learn English, read stories, because if I learn English, I can even get better marks in every subject. The advantages of using that mobile station is that the notes can be revisited. Even we can learn without the teacher. I want them to add small devices because 75 children, they use one mobile station, and even the rooms are few. When I grow up, I want to be a lawyer. I want also to sit in those big offices. They drive me in the car and take me to judge the suspect.
truly inspirational. The voices of these young girls and young women are a truly powerful ammunition for all of us to think and work differently to realize young people's dreams. The next station is a demonstration to showcase some of the strategies that we can adopt to keep girls learning, girls like Catherine in Uganda, even in the most difficult and challenging context. I'll now turn to Ingrid Sanchez Tapia, Girls Education Lead at UNICEF, and Nicola Jones, Principal Research Fellow at ODI, who will provide an overview of the Reimagining Girls Education solution to keep girls learning in emergencies. Over to you, Ingrid.
Thank you, Wangani. Now I would like to walk all of our participants through the toolkit, this global public good, how to navigate it and make the most of it, very briefly, of course. The solutions book to reimagine girls learning in emergencies is a structure based on 4 pillars or sections that facilitate quick access to information for decision making during emergency response. The pillars are 4 or sections. Those are gender responsive and inclusive planning of emergency response in education, where good practice and guiding principles are outlined. The second one, gender responsive distance education provision and learning outcomes, where evaluated and promising programs are presented for various contexts from no tech, low tech to high tech. The third one is social protection strategies to reduce the barriers that girls face when going back to school so that programs to promote girls' education are robust and effective. And the fourth one, understanding program cost and how to get value for money so that programs can more easily go to scale. Each section of this or pillar of the toolkit of the solutions book highlights key actions, guiding principles, considerations, and checklists in an accessible manner and with all the necessary references to make rapid and evidence-based decisions. The solutions book includes 22 promising programs. For each program, the reader will find essential information for decision making. For example, who is the implementer of the program, where the funding came from, the cost per child when available, country and target population, intervention type, school level, whether it's meant for primary, lower secondary, or upper secondary, type of context, program impact based on evaluations and context suitability. Each one of the 4 sections or pillars are self-contained, which combined with the design of the solutions book makes the document easy to navigate while rich in information, which is an asset when designing quality evidence-based programs that are gender responsive to support girls' learning. So with this brief introduction, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Nicola Jones, our partner for producing this global public good. So over to you, Nicola.
Thank you very much, Ingrid, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. We're really delighted to be partnering together with UNICEF on this exciting initiative. So just very briefly, from a research perspective, the solutions book, as Ingrid has highlighted, distills down key evaluation evidence on what types of programming interventions are working to support adolescent girls' learning in emergency contexts, but in particular then to look at what the evidence says are the key ingredients of those programs that appear to be most supportive of girls' learning. So during our rapid review of the evidence, we had a particular focus on adolescent girls' diverse experiences in low and middle income settings, but we really tried to look at the evidence available also for adolescent girls with disabilities, girls who have migrated, and also those from ethnic minority backgrounds and the particular educational challenges that they may face. We were supported by feedback and recommendations from a technical review committee comprised of education experts from NGO, multilateral, private sector, and UN agencies, some of whom were also able to share with us emerging evidence on promising practices within the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think what our findings really highlight is the importance of investing in needs assessments involving girls themselves to ascertain what support different cohorts of girls require in diverse settings so as to more effectively tailor the no-tech, low-tech, and high-tech programming modalities we've identified. And the evidence also points to a critical need to ensure that solutions embed content, pedagogical approaches, and partnerships with parents and communities to tackle discriminatory gender norms. And then finally, an innovative aspect of the toolkit is its inclusion of the section on age and gender responsive social protection. And this really highlights the growing evidence base on the complementary role that multi-purpose cash and food assistance can play in supporting girls' learning. So when we conclude, we've highlighted, as Ingrid has said, that there's a growing wealth of evidence on lessons that can be built on to support girls' education in emergencies. But I think at the same time, it's very important to highlight the urgent need to scale up investments in gender and age disaggregated data on access and use of technology in low and middle income settings so that we can better tailor these initiatives. But equally importantly, we need to be working together to ensure that we embed robustly designed impact evaluations of programs, even in emergency contexts, so that we have the best evidence to effectively hone these programs, both at the design and the implementation phases, so that we can maximize scarce resources for girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sanchez Tapia and Ms. Jones for providing an overview of the solutions book and highlighting how we can use it in our work to promote girls' learning in emergencies. As indicated, the solution book includes several promising practices, and we will now have the opportunity to hear about 2 of them. However, before we start this segment, I want to let you know that you can submit your questions via the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We'll now be moving on to some of these practical solutions. The first solution that we will hear about focuses on the multimodal COVID-19 education response in Malawi. And this is a collaboration between the Ministry of Education, the Jesuit Refugee Service, and UNHCR, the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Let me now introduce our presenters, Mr. Peter Nguluve, Country Director, Jesuit Refugee Service in Malawi, and Ms. Rehima Miiro, forgive my pronunciation there, the Protection Officer, UNHCR Malawi, who will each share briefly how they have been working together to support girls' learning continuity during COVID, and that builds on their collaboration prior to their crisis. Over to you, Mr. Nguluve and Ms. Mirio. Thank you.
Thank you, Ongani. I will present the Naweza program as a case study at Zareka refugee camp on how they responded to the COVID-19 crisis. So I will share 6 very short, paragraphs. Schools shut. It was a short announcement. Malawi had suddenly seen a surge in the number of positive coronavirus cases, and came the 27th of March 2020, the president declared the situation in Malawi as an emergency, and all schools and colleges were closed forthwith. And for our schools in Zareka refugee camp, this was a double blow because the camp is quite vulnerable. Now, here is the Naweza program. Naweza is a Swahili word meaning I can. And the Naweza Girls Education and Empowerment Project had to come in. And this is part of the Jesuit Refugee Service Global Education Initiative Strategy. And it addresses issues of access and quality education for the girls, while at the same time improving the girls' security and overall well-being. So what was done in this particular program? We had 107 girls in grade 8 who were about to write their national exams when the schools closed. We had 122 secondary school girls who were also about to write their O-level exams. And we had 34 girls from the various university colleges in Malawi who were also back in the camp. So we had a rapid assessment together with their involvement. And these are some of the activities that we did with them. Within Zareka refugee camp, what we did was we renovated what we called the Naweza office. Electricity in Malawi is a luxury because less than 20% of the population is connected to the national grid. So even those connected, they experience, often, issues of blackouts. So we installed solar panels on this particular building, as well as internet facilities and some desktop computers, as well as charging portals for the phones, because previously the girls were charging their phones in the market and cases of theft of the girls' phones were high. So the office turned to be a free and safe place for the girls, and they utilized all these facilities to the full. And then with UNHCR support, radios were distributed to 229 girls' families, of course, including families of the boys in standards 8 as well as in Form 4. And in total, 500 radios ensured that learners in the households followed the lessons with the community Yetu radio, which operates within the camp. And then for other girls, what was done was smartphones were procured for them, and they were also able to follow lessons online. And then for the university students in the camp, we provided internet bundles so that they could proceed with learning from their various institutions. And then in this Naweza program, we have what we call the Naweza Boys and Girls Clubs. And because convergence of the boys and girls in large numbers was highly restricted, we continued the curriculum on the radio, the very same Yetu radio. And we continued with so many modules that we do give to the boys and girls, from sexual reproductive health rights to risk awareness, decision-making, self-confidence, early marriages, assertiveness, reporting abuses, and power, just to mention a few. We also had mother groups who accompanied the girls during this difficult time. Coming from every zone of the refugee camp, they gave us periodic reports on how the girls were doing. Of course, we also provided some sets of PPEs to all the girls involved: cloth masks, 400 milliliters bottles of sanitizers, and of course, so many leaflets on COVID preventive awareness. Another critical question: did we lose any student? When schools finally resumed in September 2020, we had lost only one girl to an early marriage. However, the mother groups still talked to this girl to sit for her final O-level exams, and of course she did. And this happened in a district where 232 teenage pregnancies were registered in the very same period of the pandemic. And then during this period, how did the girls perform in the national exams? In 2019, the pass rate for the standard 8 exams was 63%. And in 2020, with all these innovations, the passing rate increased to 74%. And thanks to the Fidel Goetz Foundation, 40 scholarships have also been provided to the girls to study in some of the reputable boarding schools across Malawi. And lastly, what was the cost of all this COVID intervention to keep our girls in school? From Fidel Goetz Foundation, it was 19,000 euros. And from UNHCR for the 500 radios, it was 17.5 euros. And from GRS, it was around 5,000 euros. So what we're saying is, with a total of 41,000 euros, we can claim we did not lose a single girl during the pandemic. Thank you for listening. I will pass on to Rehema.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I want, first of all, to thank UNICEF for inviting UNHCR together with the JRS and Ministry of Education to showcase our best practices in the refugee context to continue education in emergencies for the girl child. And in this case, of course, we are referring to the COVID-19 pandemic. As my colleague has already elaborated, Peter, when the schools were closed and for more than 6 months, this actually increased the vulnerability of the refugee girls. And this was evidenced by the increase in child marriage as well as teenage pregnancies thereafter. So it was a needed and urgent collaboration to have UNHCR, Ministry of Education, and JRS to be able to respond to the continuous learning of the needs of the refugee children, and in this case, especially the girls in Zaleka refugee camp. As it has already been elaborated as well, Yetu Radio was one of the avenues that were used to continue the education. Yetu Radio is a community-based radio that was established a few years ago in the camp, and it's run by the refugees themselves. So at a very low cost, they were able to accommodate, as explained, the broadcasting of emergency radio programs, which was almost 5 days a week, an hour for the teachers to come in and provide lessons to the children. And this was also collaborated by the fact that the students were allowed to write, even on a paper, to go and actually take the questions to the Yetu Radio, and then they were able to be responded to. For those who don't have phones to correspond to the teachers, at least that was a good avenue for them. Then another avenue that was taken as well was to have a continuous information by JRS to inform the students, and especially the girls, that there was still hope actually for them to go back to school. So the enrollment or registration of students for the next semester, as soon as the schools were open, was ongoing then. And then the girls were allowed to also go and register. This was actually seen as a positive, because at the end of when the schools were opened, you find that it was a 50-50 enrollment, that is male and female, for the schools to start. So in this case, it was seen as something that, despite the fact that we did have an increase in child marriage and teenage pregnancy, but at least there was still hope for those students who at least had not been subjected to GBV during that time. So between Yetu Radio as well as the humanitarian actors, you find that it was an opportunity that all the clubs, like was already explained, the girls and the boys in the communities together were being encouraged to continue school, studying in groups, that is, in the different sector, in the different communities where they were, as well as having the life skills that they need to make sure that they go through the tough time that everyone was going through at this time during the closure of all the schools. So on that note, we focused, yes, on the girls, but also to make sure that all the children were safe throughout the pandemic. Regular distribution of soap, as well as sanitizers, and then masks were being given to the community to make sure that at least there was a proper protection within the community. And this has seen actually that not a big number of refugees were infected by COVID-19 in Zaleka refugee camp. On that note, I think I agree with my colleague Peter that this has been a success. COVID-19 has changed the way we deliver education, and also delivering education in emergencies. It has made us see different ways to actually access girls, and also to see that even within a tight context like COVID-19, where movement of women and girls was limited, that we can still be able to deliver, and then we can still be able to protect most of them to make sure that at least they have access to education, and finally they are protected from GBV. That is all from me, Rehema. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ngluwe and Ms. Miro for this inspiring example of a truly grounded emergency context approach to keep girls learning. We'll now move on to the second practice, which will be on the Learning Passport, which is a new online platform. And we'll begin with a video of how the Learning Passport is being implemented in Zimbabwe.
UNICEF promotes quality learning for every child. But the negative impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic is overwhelming, with long-term implications for children's learning, safety, health, and well-being. This is why the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, Microsoft, the University of Cambridge, and UNICEF have come together to launch the Learning Passport in Zimbabwe. The Learning Passport will improve the education of millions of children and young people. The Learning Passport is a digital platform with a library of teaching and learning resources covering the entire primary and secondary education curriculum, as well as teaching training materials. It opens up opportunities for online learning for children in and out of school. Parents, caregivers, and teachers can select the material that meets the level of knowledge and interest of their children. Children can learn at their own pace and complement their learning at school.
With my Learning Passport, I am now able to learn at home as I study to pursue my dreams of becoming a doctor.
Find out more and start your journey with the Learning Passport.
On that note, I would now like to introduce Ms. Jennifer Brooks, Director, Humanitarian Partnerships at Microsoft Philanthropies, Mrs. Tumisang Tabela, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education in Zimbabwe, and Mrs. Leili Moshiri, Representative, UNICEF Zimbabwe, who will provide us more insight into what the Learning Passport is all about and how it is being rolled out in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, good afternoon to all of you here. I'm honored to be here with the team in Zimbabwe who's making this dream come true in the country. UNICEF and Microsoft embarked in a dream as from the end of September of 2018, looking at a partnership to empower, educating and protecting 30 million of displaced children and young people, and especially young girls. Our vision was to bring together our expertise, our resources, our advocacy to empower the children, the youth, and the teachers, of course, especially committed to bring a sustainable future for all children and young people. With this, we brought innovative solutions to ensure that children and girls and young women are especially learning during emergencies, and making sure that in the co-creation of this learning passport, we will also providing access to education skills and digital skills that are needed to thrive in the digital world. The learning passport, in the end, is the backbone that Microsoft provides with the technology, but it's a UNICEF dream that we helped make true, providing education and learning not only on the move, online and offline as well, and creating an opportunity for everybody to learn regardless of location or of the opportunity now with the pandemic to learn as well from home. We are currently deployed in 10 more countries, but we're very excited of the launch happening over the next week or two in Zimbabwe. Very importantly is our commitment to girls and to girls' education. We understand that when girls and young women are learning around not only the national curriculum in the country, but also when they're learning about digital skills and basic computer science skills, we are enticing them to have critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and most importantly, creativity. This inclusion will allow that girls go back into education. We understand there's data that's informing that 50% of the girls who were displaced from schools will not go back to school globally, and we are providing the learning passport in a manner that will ensure that no girl is left behind. I want to leave everybody with a sense of urgency of making sure that every program, every opportunity, every solution is thoughtful and inclusive of girls' education. Thank you, very special thank you to Henrietta, to all of the UNICEF team, to Rob here, and to our amazing partners here in Zimbabwe, looking very specially at the first ever learning passport for girls that will be included in Zimbabwe. I want to hand this on to my colleagues here, especially to Ms. Sangsabela, Permanent Secretary and Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon, good all other times to all of our participants and colleagues. I want to say thank you very much for inviting us to this very exciting platform where we are talking as Zimbabwe about a very exciting tool, the Learning Passport, which for us is going to be a very key pillar of our trying to ensure that there's continuity of education for all our learners, but in particular for girl learners. While Zimbabwe had, before COVID-19, achieved gender parity, we have always had and continue to have a few gaps in gender responsive planning. And as we get to the secondary levels and beyond to the tertiary level, the girl child begins more and more marginalized. The emergency context, cyclones that visitors as a country did not make things any better. They just worsened the vulnerability of the girls and other marginalized groups among our learners. When COVID-19 finally landed in Zimbabwe, it was the heaviest we have had so far. And because of the containment measures, on the 24th of March, schools were closed. And they remained closed until about mid-September, when we readmitted very few of our learners, the examination classes. Something urgent had to be done to make sure children don't regress and don't totally get lost from the education landscape. The ministry, in partnership with our education cluster on humanitarian assistance, where UNICEF sits as a co-chair, came up with a number of initiatives. And one of the key pillars to our strategies under COVID-19 was the alternative learning strategies, which entailed the provision of education services or products through modes and other avenues other than face-to-face learning. Among these other models of offering education, the Learning Passport came in at the right time to give us one of the very effective passports, in a way, to continuing with education. Our challenge, however, was the reach of the Learning Passport, because it really reaches currently automatically to 30% of our learners who are online. And the other who would benefit then from the exciting offline programs, for now, still are waiting for us to launch and then see how we move over from online and roll over to offline products. When we come to the Reimagining Girls' Education Solutions to keep girls learning in emergencies launch, we as Zimbabwe are excited because, as I said, it comes in at the center of what we are saying, how can we blend models of education to make sure our girls are not left behind, to make sure even boys also benefit. It is encouraging to note that we are referring to the continuum of no tech through low tech to high tech alternatives in the tool that UNICEF is launching today. I am very grateful that offline options are available because these will then attend to our 60% learners who are not benefiting from other online platforms currently. Learning is indeed a lifelong activity. The passport will thus enrich seekers of knowledge for both our formal and non-formal clients, giving them a passport to re-navigate their educational journey, whatever disruption to their school calendar or their school journey. Initially, the learning passport should reach about 300,000 learners out of our 4.5 million learners. Quite a significant statistic, which will ensure learning continues anywhere, anytime, and for anyone. This launch today, therefore, is thus an opportunity for organizational learning as we join the global dialogues on how to ensure meaningful and affordable learning takes place at all times. Since education is a basic development tool, our nation depends on us and you, our partners, to make sure that we guarantee uninterrupted development of its human capital, starting from the earliest education levels, the early childhood levels. Each step that will be taken in the development of this child is critical. Hence, tools such as the learning passport become very important in helping our children keep up with their developmental learning journey or catch up with the gaps that have been created by emergencies such as COVID-19, and thereafter stay on course with their educational development. As already indicated, Zimbabwe will be launching its learning passport very soon and will then be rolling it out to our structures. We are excited. We can't wait for that period. And to continue the Zimbabwe journey, allow me to hand over to Leili and to say thank you to all of you for listening.
Good day, dear participants. Thank you, Jennifer and PS for the explanation about the passport, about the learning passport. It's a pleasure for me to be here to discuss the Learning Passport Initiative on behalf of UNICEF Zimbabwe. As mentioned also, Zimbabwe hasn't been free from other crises, and when COVID-19 hit Zimbabwe, we were already dealing with multiple emergency situations, including the impact of Cyclone Idai. And as already mentioned, children were out of school due to the COVID crisis, and today we still see about 4.5 million learners not in school, following a very short period when schools were reopened. We know that the current pandemic will not be the last crisis we face, so we are using this moment to strengthen the resilience of the education system with girls at the center of our work. The COVID pandemic has allowed us to embrace the potential of technology and innovation to transform education systems more quickly. Since March last year, we've worked with the government to implement innovative solutions to ensuring learning continuity. Among them, the work on the learning passport that we seized to become one of the initial countries. So what have we done so far? We've spent the last few months working with the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education and partners to identify locally relevant content and make them available through the platform. This content covers primary and secondary education. We're closely collaborating with the Content Development Committee of the Ministry to develop new material as well. The Learning Passport Zimbabwe mobile application is in development to ensure easy and wider access as well as offline use of the platform. We're engaging telecommunication companies to zero rate the Learning Passport in Zimbabwe, making it free for users, meaning the cost of data, which is one of the highest in the world in Zimbabwe, will not prevent most marginalized children accessing the platform. Given the significant barriers to learning for girls during emergencies in Zimbabwe, we have together curated a gender equality package of materials for the Learning Passport, which covers 5 thematic areas: gender equality, comprehensive sexual education, prevention of gender-based violence, STEM, and a gender approach to economic empowerment and entrepreneurship. For us, the Learning Passport has demonstrated the power of strong partnerships to put world-class digital learning solutions in the hands of girls and boys, and especially marginalized girls. The government of Zimbabwe, UNICEF, Microsoft, education stakeholders, and telecommunication companies have contributed their expertise and resources and worked together over the last few months to prepare the platform. The official launch, as was mentioned, is planned for the 11th of March with many promotional activities planned around it. But as we roll out the Learning Passport in Zimbabwe, we know that data evidence will be critical, so we would need to monitor the usability test, do usability testing to understand better how girls interact with the content and its usefulness and access. And we need to listen to the voices of girls and young women that are using the Learning Passport. And we will be leveraging tools such as YouReport, youth platforms, and the Internet of Good Things to get feedback on the Learning Passport. We hope that the experience of Zimbabwe can be used by others who want to radically scale up digital learning solutions. And I would like to end by saying that UNICEF Zimbabwe is excited about the Learning Passport and how it will contribute to building back better so that every girl and boy can access quality digital learning opportunities. And we remain optimistic about a bright future for girls and young women in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists from Zimbabwe, Malawi, and Microsoft Philanthropies. That was quite inspiring. We've received a number of questions in the Q&A, but in the interest of time, we will not be able to go through that, but we hope you can find some of those answers in the solutions book. I will now sign on to invite 2 education in emergencies experts, and I would like to introduce to you Mr. Chris Berry, Senior Education Advisor, Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, and Mr. Dean Brooks, Director, Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies. I have a question for these 2 experts in emergencies, Mr. Berry and Mr. Brooks. From your own perspective, what do you think is the added value of the solutions book, and how does it complement existing resources? I'll give you just about 2 minutes each to respond to that question. Thank you.
Want me to start, Wangani? Thanks. Lovely to see you, by the way, and thanks to UNICEF for inviting us to say a few words. Can I just say a couple of things and then come to the question? So I think it's great to see the issue of girls' education in emergency is so high on the agenda today in the run-up to International Women's Day. And as probably most of you know, UK is championing 12 years of quality education for girls. It's one of our 7 global commitments in our new overseas development strategy. And we've set some global targets, ambitious global targets around reaching those goals. Those targets won't be met unless we can do more together around this issue of emergency education. And we're talking here about both conflict and extreme weather events and things like COVID, which has been spoken about today. And obviously climate change is part of the kind of problem that we're getting with extreme weather events. So what we're trying to do is to work across our bilateral and multilateral programming to make a difference. So it's great to see GPE on the platform and Alice. ECW is a key partner here, and we want to see the two working in a complementary fashion to deliver for children affected by emergencies. We see GPE as being very focused on the system side, ECW on the beneficiary side. We're using our bilateral programs to really focus on these populations where that makes sense. And we're trying to improve data and evidence on what works to reach these girls and also those children with disability affected by conflict, disease, outbreaks and extreme weather events. So that's where this kind of guidance comes in. I really like the way in which it draws on best practice to make the points it's making and to really illustrate the what works question. I think this complements the tool that's going to be launched next week with ECW, the Education in Emergencies Gen Kit. So I think they should be seen as working in complementary ways to help those who are programming to do their job better. And I think the set of things that the toolkit's focused on are spot on. So improving gender responsiveness in planning and in coordination, key issue. And the whole issue of distance learning, which as we've seen from COVID is so essential to keep children in education. Reducing the financial barriers. I really like the fact that that's included, not typically thought about in education programs, but clearly a binding constraint. And then value for money. There's not a lot of data there, but let's get better at collecting that data. So really delighted to have been given the opportunity to say a few words, Wangani, and good luck with the as this rolls out. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, and echo the points raised by my colleague Chris Berry. A very important and timely tool that UNICEF is releasing. As some of you know, INEE, the Interagency Network for Education in Emergencies, works to support knowledge management, knowledge sharing, and the development of global public goods, as well as capacity exchange and technical support for practitioners working in emergencies and protracted crisis settings. And this tool is one of these tools that will really help them as they do their work. Many global public goods on gender and girls' education in emergencies to date have really focused on access to education. So having this toolkit with a focus on girls' learning is timely and necessary. As a longtime practitioner myself, I would have welcomed something like this many years ago to advocate and to really implement quality programming. I just wanted to mention INEE and UNICEF being one of its founding members just celebrated its 20th anniversary, and we published a comprehensive report which I wanted to highlight for you. That report found that in 2019, before the pandemic, girls, young people, children, all of primary and secondary school aged living in conflict affected contexts, there was a 31% attendance rate for girls compared to 27% for boys. And another really worrying statistic that UNESCO Institute for Statistics helped us to uncover was that 127 million children and young people were out of school before the pandemic. So quite worrying. And up until now, we have been using a figure of 75 million. So it's an important number for all of us. Again, these numbers don't take into account what the pandemic has brought. But as we know, COVID-19, the school closures that were talked about today, the global recession, are increasing already high levels of gender inequality in education. During the pandemic, girls and young women have taken on additional caregiving and domestic labor burdens and have been exposed to greater risks of early and unwanted pregnancy, child marriage, sexual and gender-based violence, and a lack of access to healthcare. These risks, combined with pre-existing unequal access to education and technology, has compounded the effects on girls' access to quality education. Thus, we need this tool, and again, timely. I also just wanted to bring to your attention real quick that INE is currently supporting efforts to amplify the evidence base on gender and girls' education. So in April, we will be publishing a comprehensive report on the state of girls' education and emergencies, which looks at recent progress made in improving education and training for girls and women. One of the findings, so just a little bit of a pre-announcement, is that one of our findings is that girls will not reach 100% of lower secondary completion in crisis-affected countries until at least 2063, if we look at our current trends. So again, worrying and so needed tools and resources like this. We look forward to sharing that report with you. Please visit inee.org and sign up for all kinds of reports and membership if you haven't already. But just to say that we really welcome this event and this opportunity to highlight such an important issue in education and emergencies. And we would like to congratulate UNICEF, all the partners on the call, for developing a practical resource. And I want to emphasize that word practical, because that's what we need if we're going to make a difference. And thank you. Yeah, this is really an important resource, and it's really being launched at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you to Chris, and thank you to you, Dean, as well. Chris, you mentioned an important publication that's going to be coming out next week, which is a sister companion resource called the Education in Emergencies Gen Kit, and we invite everyone to participate in that as well. I think what Chris and Dean have put forward for us is that we are quite resourced at the moment and prepared with several tools that will help us work more effectively to mitigate the impact of emergencies on girls' education. As we know, and as several panelists have indicated, COVID will not be the last crisis we face. A few takeaways before we close, and we apologize for going over the time. The importance of putting girls at the center of our response, but also the recognition that technology will actually be key in helping us to bridge the gap for girls' education, and also working in partnership, capitalizing on that ecosystem, both within the education sector and beyond as well, will be key to addressing the barriers that prevent girls from accessing quality learning. And as Chris Berry also indicated, it's important for us to continue strengthening the evidence base of what works. I do recall him mentioning value for money. It's important for us to look at the most cost-effective ways of reaching the most marginalized girls and making sure that we have that information in the hands of our partners and the practitioners on the ground. And lastly, but not least, is to emphasize the role of transformative leadership and, of course, strategic investments that are actually needed to scale up solutions and support girls' learning and continuity in emergencies. I want to close by thanking all our speakers and panelists for your contributions into what has been a rich and inspiring discussion, and also all our participants for joining us today. We ask on you to continue working together so that every girl can achieve 12 years of basic quality education. And to our event organizers, Eventic, I say thank you, and thank you to everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Take
much.
care.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.